we don't recognize that until we start doing our shadow work. And a lot of the time it has to get so bad, as in like hitting a
Mhm.
bottom of some sorts, where you're like, I can't live like this anymore.
Hello, beautiful supporters. Welcome to episode 5 of Support Sister. I am your host, Anya Day. Join me as I interview Kristie Sparksman, an inner pain tour guide. We dive into the topic of love addiction, what it is and where it stems from. We cover childhood trauma, unmet needs, cultural love programming, and how to heal. Tune in. I know you will love this episode as much as I did. We had so much fun and we definitely went there. Lots to uncover, lots to unpack. Please hit the subscribe button, like the video, and share it. Thank you so much for your support. And we've connected and just got along so well that we thought we would join forces and shine the good light. And we spoke like a few days ago and it was just an instant kismet connection. So we're like, we got to showcase this wonderful energy and either annoy people or bring them joy into the world. So without further ado, let me introduce Kristie.
It's a double-edged sword, I find, annoying people and having fun.
Right. You're either in the joke or you're not. That's fine.
Actually, that's an interesting segue into shadow, because um, I've found, like, before I had woke up and gone through that awakening experience and started facing shadow, people who were really happy used to piss me
That
off.
makes sense.
I mean, there's still some of that, like the toxic positivity. It's just stuff that goes on, but for a long time, I was so bitter, and um, I loved the darkness and listening to the Smiths and in my headphones and just smoking and being like,
Yeah.
fuck all the happy people. But I realized it's because I had repressed my own joy. Because when I was a kid, if I was ever like, you know, like just being a kid, a lot of the times our parents, through no fault of their own, shamed us or told us to shut up or behave or be good. And, so we learned to be good, which was basically obedient and repressed. And
Yeah.
Good segue.
Good segue. Yeah. No, that was great. We'll dive more into that. So today we're going to talk about love addiction. Recently, I just learned this term, and you can also call it fantasy addiction. And for the longest time, I was so unconscious to this that I was constantly in my head repeating these weird scripted cycles, and it was the same relationship after another. And I realized that I just needed them to like me, to give me validation, versus actually having a relationship with the other person. It was all obsessive compulsive thoughts in my head. And it, like, the perfect description of it, it's like a cocaine high. And it very much, I did it for the rush. I needed the rush.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually distracted me from doing day-to-day things. And like my whole energy field will be consumed by chasing this object of affection. So let's dive in.
The word object is perfect for sort of where I want to go with that. I so feel you. That was my whole life so far, has been that, just chasing after someone. A second part to that was when they got too close, pushing them away.
Yep.
Constantly, like, you get to know me, see you later. Like, one foot in the relationship, 1 foot out. Always, every single one. I was always on guard, just like waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak. So object. I mean, so when I talk about this stuff, Anya, you and I talked about this briefly in our conversation, but for anybody watching, I like to hold a multidimensional consciousness when I talk about these things, because we are both human in spirit. We did come here to have this human experience in these bodies. So I like to call it diver and the lifeguard, which I told you. It's keeping that, two-tiered perspective of, yes, these are the lessons I chose to come here with. And then also I'm having the human experience. So my snake plant, it just keeps grabbing me a lot.
It might have love addiction also.
He's like, love me. And so when I talk about the theory or the childhood trauma stuff too, of course, it's also from the multidimensional perspective. So that's just a little caveat, I suppose. So back to what I was saying, when we're young and developing, we reach to our parents for what is called, basically we're reaching outwards for something that is going to be consistently loving upon us, consistently supportive, consistently just there for us, loving us no matter what. Because our parents are also wounded, and their parents and their parents, a lot of the time they can't give us those things. Like no parent can really be there 100% of the time, which is why I don't think anyone comes into this place, this earth plane, without getting a little bit injured, a little bit traumatized, like from mild to severe. And so it's called emotional object constancy. That's what we're looking for with the parent. Somebody to be there no matter what. And like I said, many of the parents aren't able to be there. And so we start to lose that constancy. We don't have that thing to keep us sort of safe and like held and nurtured. So we get very stressed out. When we get stressed out, we lack brain development, all sorts of things happen. We carry that pattern with us into adulthood. So that grasping, that chasing, that fantasy of, being saved, it comes from childhood. Like what was our first relationship with the world, right? It was our parents.
Yeah.
And we don't, like after around the age of 7, we don't really learn further, like different ways. Those things sort of are set in our subconscious. And it's almost like the subconscious is the dirt and little flowers of our experience pop out through it. And that's the part of like shadow work, is having to dive in and like really look at the patterns in our lives. Like I'll use mine for an example. My dad moved overseas when I was very young, and my mom also left for a time. And so I didn't have any consistency in terms of attaching. So men and women, I always had a problem with females. Do you know the trope of, you're a female and you have problems with connecting with other females? A lot of that is from having a mother wound, having that like issue. Like that was me growing up. I was like, screw women, I want to hang out with guys, I'm one of the guys, all that stuff, because I didn't get that mothering in the way that I needed. So I don't know if it's the same for you or similar, if you know.
Yes,
kind of.
Absolutely. Like I didn't realize it until like the last year or so, that how disconnected I was from the feminine side. Like a part of what I had read about love addiction is it stems from the mother wounding, and if the mother wasn't nurturing enough, that it triggered that kind of response within you. And my mom was very aloof. Like she was physically present, but she would never emotionally receive me the way I needed her to.
Yes. Yeah. Because what we're doing when we're being raised is we're attuning to the mother, primary caregiver. It's usually the mother. Sometimes it's the dad, but most times it's the mother. And if she is not present with herself, and if she has things she hasn't worked through, or if she's depressed, or if she's anxious, energetically, we pick that up. And there's a disconnect with the attunement. And so like what you said, they can be present in our lives, but we can still be abandoned.
Yeah. And it took me a long time to realize that part also. It's like, well, I was never really abandoned because they were there. But then I was like, no, Anya, you were emotionally abandoned. Like, it doesn't matter if there's a body present. It like matters also like the interaction and like the richness that you like get from that.
And, that's one of the hardest things is to, when you're doing this healing work from childhood, is to actually acknowledge that something happened like that. Because there's so many different layers that we pack upon our experience so that we don't feel the pain of that, like down here. And so, like, if you look at it from the adult lens, you're like, oh, my childhood wasn't that bad. Like that was, I thought back to mine and I was like, we went on so many camping trips. I was in so many activities. I have 3 siblings. We had so much fun. Like it was just, I remember there being a lot of fun, but I always remember being on edge, constantly hypervigilant, either that or dissociated from my experience. Those are the only like ways of being I knew. And then as I grew older, like I just started totally being out of my body. It was like I was here watching myself my entire life. Like that's like 31 years of that. And, because I didn't get that attunement, that like vibing, that on the energetic level, just knowing you're safe and you're held. And it's a certain level of denial that we kind of have to peel back to realize that, yeah, it was actually that bad. Because to a child, the worst thing in the world is to not have that parent be present. Like, think about a little kid losing its parent in like a mall. That kid is like, that is the scariest child. I got shivers just everywhere.
I have goosebumps. I'm like massaging myself.
Like to a kid, that is horrible. But when you look at it from the adult lens, you're like, oh, it's not that bad. Yeah. But to a kid, that's like the worst thing in the world. You get dropped off at daycare. That's so scary. Where's mom? Where's dad? Kids don't know how to express that, and they don't know how to, some do. Of course, they cry, and like that's the note that something's wrong, right? So, yeah. Basically, looking for mommy and daddy.
So so we could just all blame it on mom and dad for our love addiction issues. Shout out to mom and dad.
No. Oh yeah, it's not their fault. Like I had to really go through and own my rage, my grief, the terror, all of that stuff in order to heal it, and also acknowledge that they did the best they could with what they knew how to do.
So could we really dive into like some steps to integrate shadow for people really quickly? Like,
oh my gosh, this has been my life for a year. Somebody asked me the other day, like, what have you been up to? And I'm just like crying a lot. Like, I know it doesn't sound very fun, but it has been extremely productive given like where I used to be to where I am now. So honestly, there are so many different things. So I'll just start kind of rambling some off. One of the first things that I did was wrote down everything. Are you talking specifically shadow or in relation to healing? I'm just going to go with like childhood healing because this is like love addiction kind of stems from.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was really honest with myself and I wrote down everything I could remember from childhood objectively, like not what it made me feel, just objectively, just wrote it down. Mom left this age, dad left this age, step parent, this, that, all of that stuff. I just wrote it all down so that I had that list. At some point, I started getting validation from a friend. We started working together, and I actually was seen and heard, and was able to, have somebody be like, "Yeah, that wasn't okay." So, I would say getting somebody else that you trust and love that honestly isn't that close to you, because sometimes their own perception of how things should be can skew things. Like, I would love to get validated by my sister, one of my sisters, but I wouldn't ask them because they are in my family and they're kind of close to me. If that makes any sense, it's sort of like it's like having a sponsor in recovery. You know, having somebody that's like knows your story but isn't too close to you so that they don't get emotionally involved. So sharing your story in that way, grieving.
Yeah.
Grieving. Transmuting those energies because they're just stuck. The shadow is things we don't want to look at, patterns that are lodged in our subconscious, and how to determine those beliefs is to look at the pattern, like what's showing up in your life, you know, like for you, like think of like a pattern you had with men.
Oh God.
And then you step it backwards and you're like, okay, so if every guy I date is emotionally unavailable, what is my belief? Or what was my relationship with my dad? Or, you know, another male adult in my life? Or what did my mom say about my dad? You know, like, what do I believe? You trace it back from like what you can observe and sort of what's tangible. And then you work it back to like, I like to do it, beliefs, emotions, thoughts, actions, and like behaviors are kind of together. So like trace it back up that thing. Cause like sometimes we don't know what we believe, right? Or if they're even our beliefs.
Yeah. I just learned that like a huge percentage of my beliefs aren't even mine. Like I think 2020, I was scraping all of that while being in like this hermitude, like just scraping all of these things that weren't me. And I was like, oh dear.
My glasses.
Your rose-colored glass.
Taking off her rose-colored glasses. Like, oh damn.
yeah, it's real. It's getting real. So another thing I noticed with love addiction is this high sense of codependency. There is a lot of codependency at play, which, you know, is probably transmuted from mom and dad as well. And like, I don't know, for me, like I was only taught how to abandon myself. I couldn't listen. I wasn't taught how to listen to myself. That, you know, you follow the rules, that's it. But like that, having that self-abandonment and that codependency, like once I put my heart into someone else's hands, I lost all of my logic. I was like, okay, they're right. Anything they could say, they could tell me the sky was red, and I'll be like, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. There's a little tinge. Like I would try to bring their false beliefs into my reality. Like it was a mess.
Yeah. Do you have any specifics that you want to share?
No.
I've got horror stories, I feel. Like it's just, oh.
Bring them on. Bring one on. Bring one to the table. We'll dissect it.
Off the top of my head. Okay. This one person that I was dating back in the day, I had tickets to go see Vampire Weekend. And I was really excited.
Okay.
Maybe like 2010. And the guy I was dating at the time was in a really shitty mood from work. And he was just going to go to the bar and drink with his friends. But because I was so codependent in that, like, me doesn't exist, me and you are fused and we are one, and nothing that you do doesn't affect me, I bailed on going to the concert because I didn't feel like I should, because he felt bad. Even though he was not coming like home or whatever, he was going out, I felt like I couldn't go have fun if he was going to be at home being sad. So I just like sat at home, and like I thought that seemed totally normal to me at the time. I was like, yeah, no, gotta honor, you know, the guy, and who cares what I want. And
yeah, it's like you feel so responsible for the other person's emotions, and like you think that you could somehow control the situation and be the hero also in someone else's wounds.
Yes, the savior. You know, for me, the savior kind of aspect came in like I always felt like I had to be the like a second parent, like a co-parent with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 younger siblings, and I'm the oldest, and I always took on that role. Roles is a big thing in codependent dynamics. You like want to be the caretaker, and if you learn that your worth is dependent on, like, if you're always helping out mom and dad, you're going to learn that your worth, and they compliment you, you're going to learn that your worth is based on how much you can give to others.
Yes.
And if somebody doesn't teach you to honor yourself, you're not going to learn it from there, because kids watch what people do. They do as you do, not what you say. Kids are absorbing. Like, it's like our brains are open until like 7-ish, just like this. We're just like taking in, observing, watching energetically, like all of that stuff. And then it just sort of closes up, and we're able to like be conscious, and it's like, well, everything you just learned. So yeah, no, codependency is ultimately relationship addiction.
Yeah.
It's and here's the thing, it is so rampant.
Yeah.
Like, once I kind of like came out of the fog of everything, I look around and I'm like, holy shit, like we are such a codependent species, and it's no judgment. It's just like, I'm so glad there's like a massive awakening going on, because it's just like almost like spiritual puberty.
Ooh.
We have to grow up now.
Yeah, it's like we have the adult bodies, but we still aren't in that spiritual peak yet.
We're still children inside. And when we're children, we're trying to date people who are also children, and it's like we're having 2 little kids fighting over like, meet my needs, and it's never gonna work like that.
I think people are too afraid to speak up on their needs, to actually communicate that verbally. At least for me, like, even I've done so much work in 2019, and then I thought I was ready for a relationship, so I did the Hinge thing, and I scored. I found someone great, but like I was like, I am in so much deep trouble, because even as much work as I had put in that last year, like it all flopped. Like, I was so afraid to like still like sometimes speak up for my needs and like how I felt about something, because I was afraid he would break up with me if I had like a different opinion. And it was just all of this fantasy that I would run in my head. And I always had this loop that he would cheat on me or something. Like, it was constant and took me so out of the present moment. It sucked.
Oh my God, yeah.
And yeah, I would throw in manipulation tactics, like to cope with it, like super, 3D programs, as we are taught through movies and all
Oh my God, the movies. It's hard to watch TV. I don't really watch too much stuff anyways, but it's hard to watch movies and listen to songs.
Yeah.
Because I'm aware of it now. So when I watch it, I'm like, this is disgusting. I don't mean like in a judgmental way. I just mean like, oh, this is icky. Like, this just does not resonate anymore as being something that is like healthy. But when we watch things, what are we watching it for? To sort of drift away and numb out, right? Like, have somebody else have like a movie and like have an experience going on, and like, and we're like absorbing this, and it's
The biggest example I had that I recently spoke about was Sex and the City. It was the biggest show, but it was the fucking like the guide map, I feel, for like the female to operate in relationships. And it was just a mess, like looking back. And I was like, that was me. And like, I thought that was normal. Like, that was the etiquette. Like, on top of which, like, they like slept around with so many people, and that's all cool and gravy. But like, in these days, it's like, yo, you got to be careful who you share your energy with.
Oh, totally. I used to have a really, really raging sex addiction. It didn't matter who or what. not what. Sorry, that's the wrong. Whatever. It didn't matter who. As long as there was a warm body next to me, because I was so scared to be alone. And I was able to dissociate so much out of myself that I would basically just be there but not be there. So, and learning things like, how to be the best lover, like Cosmo magazine, like all this stuff is just programming, like 50,000 ways to please him. It's like, that's the stuff I used to read in high school.
Yeah.
And like, and so I grew up thinking like I'm supposed to be this sexual object, and my worth is dependent on how well I can perform that. So I worked at bars and I had to wear sexy clothes all the time, and just basically be that object to attract that person who would then make me whole, not knowing that it's not their job. It's not their job.
So hard, because I know me, like I function well when I'm just on my solo journey, but introducing another person that's like a potential partner, it really does start messing with my flow, because I could see myself like stop doing the activities that I used to do and just blur that line and spend an excessive amount of time with them and just completely abandon my track and even my mental spirituality thing. Like I noticed that in my last relationship, like I wasn't meditating as much. I wasn't doing my breath work. I had to abandon my routine because of this new thing that was introduced, this dynamic. It sucked.
I know you and I have both been on the twin flame journey. So like to this day, I have never had a conscious, healthy relationship. All of them have been codependent and just very like two inner kids meeting, trying to force each other to be each other's parents in very subtle ways, manipulating and being complex and, fighting, meeting needs and expectations and things. So like I don't have any experience with that yet, and like the real world. So I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah. I don't know what to do. I think we just all want love. Like we all crave love, but it's like the self-love is like where we need to master before the external.
So on that note, I'm going to circle back to the emotional object constancy.
Yes.
So if we didn't get it from our parents, basically the premise is that you get it from your parents. Your parents never abandon you, even when you feel down, whatever, or you guys have a fight, they'll still be there.
Yeah.
How many parents, like I don't know really any examples where it was like the parent was 100% all of the time, right? So most of us, I would say all of us, I don't like to use all or nothings, but I would say all of us are hurt in some levels, in some ways. So that emotional object constancy, we've always had it outside of ourselves, right? If we had had that healthy upbringing, we learn to like bring it in here. We kind of absorb it, we mirror it, and we learn to have that in here. When you have it in here, you're able to like know that, if you and your partner fight, he still loves you, you're still safe. But if you didn't get that, that's when you're like, I don't know about you, but like the second there was like any sort of troubled water, I would be like, oh my God, he's leaving. I would start to like either cling, or I would bolt, or I would be like on the phone finding someone else to replace, like slightest bit of conflict, or like even like the stories I would create. I would be like, oh, he's late coming back from work or late to meet me. He hates me.
Yes, there was always a story, and like you're like, well, I have to check his phone now. Like I have to, like, because there's a story, and like you have to find you're like looking for things in that scripted story.
Yeah. It's hypervigilance. You're just like constantly waiting for them to go.
Yeah.
And you're always on the lookout checking to make sure that that love is still going to be there, like always. Like I feel like I never really slept before because I was such a light sleeper, but now I realize that that was me being hyper vigilant all the time, that I couldn't turn it off. Like my actual my nervous system could never relax because I never felt safe, and that's why I would get wasted and sleep with someone so that I would feel safe.
Yeah.
As sad as that sounds, it's like that was my life for 4 years straight. That's all I did. Blackout 6 times a week, and just sleep with people and like be held and just
Yeah. So there is a word that I want to introduce that is related to love addiction. It's called limerence. Love addicts, I'll define limerence in a second, but they pretty much rely on the neurochemical rush as their primary way to avoid feeling stress and other forms of emotional discomfort. And they use the naturally occurring high of limerence for escape and dissociation, just like alcoholics, drug addicts, sex addicts, compulsive gamblers, and other addicts. So it like to numb out, like how you just said, the ups and downs of life. I need to quickly look up the definition of limerence, but that is a part of love addiction. Limerence. Limerence.
I like that word. I've never heard it before.
Yes. Limerence is a state of mind which results from a romantic attraction to another person and typically includes obsessive thoughts and fantasies and a desire to form or maintain a relationship with the object of love and have one's feelings reciprocated. So it's all about having your object of affection, like just you're consumed by having your feelings reciprocated, pretty much, and that defines limerence. And I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is sort of feels a little bit like conditional love. Like that. Like right now, I love somebody so deeply, and like we don't talk ever. And he's not in my life in that way, but that doesn't mean I don't love him unconditionally. And it's like it's in there, and like he doesn't need to be in my life for me to love him. And like I never ever have been like that before. It always needs to have so many conditions on it, right? It's like, oh well, if you're not in my life, if you're not texting me or checking in on me, obviously you don't care. It's just me making stories, right? Like it, and that's like I mean that's of course the twin flame stuff, but that's not, we don't have to dive into that. That's a separate show.
That's a different show, folks. We'll talk about the twin flame journey.
But yeah. Oh my God, there's so much to say.
Something while you think about that, like, so another thing I just pulled up is what happens in this like love addiction situation is you fall in love with the idea of the person rather than who they are themselves, which I've been so guilty of. And you have become enamored with winning the game that you have started playing, not for any eventual want of being with the person, but for the prize which you are envisioning in your head.
Yeah, see, I think of childhood with that, it's like basically think of a go-kart track. And you're going along, living your life, and your dad leaves, your parents divorce, or your mom leaves, whatever. Basically, that track gets interrupted, and you have a traumatic event happen. Trauma, I think a lot of people misunderstand trauma. Trauma is any event or sequence of events that is unsettling. It can be very simple, or it can be a big horrific like avalanche or hurricane or something huge, or it can be being abandoned, your parents divorcing. It can be anything on that scale, anything that causes disrest, unease, dis-ease in your head, in your body, in your whatever. So you're on this loop and it's interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
and you're used to that. Like this is the ingrained like neural loop
Mm-hmm.
that you're in, right? You'll seek out somebody in order to complete that loop. So like for me, I'll use myself. My dad left, and every single guy I dated after that would leave. And I kept trying to complete that loop of you know, winning my dad back, basically,
Yeah.
making my partner my parent,
Mm-hmm.
like loving him enough so that he wouldn't go
Mm-hmm.
this time, like as if there was anything I could have done
Mm-hmm.
as a kid to prevent my dad from leaving. But we don't recognize that until we start doing our shadow work. And a lot of the time it has to get so bad, as in like hitting a
Mm-hmm.
bottom of some sorts, where you're like, I can't live like this anymore. Because if you're not in that like low place to change, it's hard when you're comfortable and you're just like in a relationship that's easy and you've been in it for a while, even though it's like not really fulfilling
Yeah.
you, and in those ways, or you're dependent on them instead of coming home to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to change. I mean, I was lucky I had a spiritual awakening. Just spat. So like my life was just like just
Yes.
in an instant. So, but like, I hit many bottoms on my way down. It was like new layers of like, oh my God, I'm this old and I've never had a relationship. Like I want intimacy. I want that with somebody, but I can't have that until I have that with myself. Like on a true soul level, like this is why I came here, to have that intimacy with myself. Because if I can't have that with me in a way where I'm honest with myself, I'm not in denial, I meet my own needs, I don't depend on someone else to make me happy, because it's not anybody else's job. That takes a serious spiritual puberty. It takes a lot. We have to grow up in that way, and it's so uncomfortable.
It hurts.
Like hell. You're dropping stories, you're dropping even like a few months ago I was sitting there and I was like so furious that no one was going to ride in on a horse and save me. Like I was pissed about the fantasy. I was like just pissed. I was like, what the hell? Like I have to do this? Like, like kids stamping your foot and being like, screw this. Like, because I never learned how to do this. So it's like as an adult, it's like, oh,
yeah, it's gruesome work. You brought up something that we need to dive into, and that is the Disney princess complex.
That is some programming.
Yeah, because you reminded me, because we wanted to talk about this, and when you just said like the guy with the horse and the savior, I was like, Disney.
Yes, that is.
So for me, like I know you have like a lot to speak on this, so we will dive in right now. But Disney was just the conditioning, the mecca of just like how a relationship, how love should operate between a male and female. We'll use that matrix because that was the Disney from the 90s and 80s. But yeah, like it was, you just had to wait for Prince Charming. You could sleep, you could take a nap. Yeah, you don't have to do shit. Like you just sleep and lay there and look pretty. I'm gonna go get Prince Charming. He's gonna slay a dragon and like get a noble steed, and he's gonna be macho and flex, and he's gonna come save your ass and wake you up, and you're gonna live happily ever after. Bam.
Like, ugh. And that's what we show children who are developing brains.
I know. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? If you have any theories also about that.
Theories. Yeah, no, you nailed it. It's that like just sit around waiting for someone to save you, to come by, to just rescue you, damsel in distress, right? Like, Prince Charming will show up and he'll just be perfect. He'll meet all of my needs. All of my expectations will be fulfilled. The one, chemistry, all of this stuff is just attachment trauma. It's like, I'm sorry to break it to people, but like so much of that, like that rush of, and like that idea that someone can save us is just an old program in, you know, the matrix, that is keeping us in this very small box of what love actually is. Yeah, you know, I had not every Disney movie, but I had a lot of them.
Which one was your favorite growing up?
Are you talking princess movies or?
Yeah. Little sick princess.
I really liked The Swan Princess. That was a good one. Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Like, somebody can just kidnap you, keep you locked up, and that's love. Like, that's not okay.
Pretty much, yeah.
Not okay. And like, you know, yeah. Fox and the Hound was also good, but I don't think that was really about love. That was more about friendship. So good though. I think that you know, because the consciousness on the planet has been raising so much in the last little while, that, you know, I think these old ways of relating to love are gonna, like, they're breaking apart right now. All things are, all the systems, all the ways we've been like kept in the box, like I said. And, you know, it's really painful to realize that, you know, life isn't a Disney movie, and that it's not even Disney. Like, it's so many romantic comedies. It's about, you know, a girl changing for a guy, or a guy changing for a girl, you know, in order to be together, or, you know, it's just, I'm glad that things are changing is basically it. It makes my heart hurt on like the human level for, you know, how much we've all suffered at the hands of this programming, but at the same time, like diver and lifeguard.
Yeah.
I'm also just like, I can see the bigger picture, and that we are evolving so beautifully and shedding all of these things that are not love, and we're reinventing love, like coming back to the essence of it, which is that we're never apart from it. It's right here. That emotional object constancy I talked about, that for me became source, like source energy. Instead of needing someone else to fulfill that role for me, that wouldn't go away, that person that would just love me endlessly, that's what I reached to source for. God, universe, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, it's in me now. So like, I don't need anyone to be happy. This is like the first time in my life that I actually really mean that. I don't need anyone. Would I love to share my life with somebody? Absolutely. But it's not, it's an interdependence, you know. You can dance with someone and meet your own needs, and they meet their needs, and then there, you know, there's some need play, you know, in the relationship, like respect and boundaries and things like that. But for the most part, if you're here and they're there, it's beautiful. And you can really love each other at that really sincere way that isn't filled with story and expectation and
drama. I was addicted to drama.
Oh yeah.
I needed drama. Like, otherwise what are we doing?
Like, oh yeah, it's even hard to watch like things like, I don't know, here's an example, Grey's Anatomy. Like, love that show. It's so toxic to watch it. You know, I'm watching it and I'm like, this is so bad. It's like the drama, we feed on it, you know?
Yeah. We've got a lot of comments. I haven't been, I don't know if you can see them, but there's a lot. But just to quickly touch on the comments, because they're really good too. But David brings up The Awakening, a few of them. The Awakening kiss with the Disney, the fairy tales, the fables, and he also brings up love songs, which is another thing. Britney Spears, come on. I was like, I can't wait for a relationship. Like, you're singing like this is some magic shit. Like, let's go.
Oh my God. Honestly, like, I have a bunch of really cool playlists, and I was listening to this one to kind of like hype up, and I was just dancing around, and I was like, I can't listen to this and then talk about love addiction. This is like about how someone is going to complete you. And I'm just like, no. I know songs, David. Yes, yes, yes. Songs.
Yeah. Love songs. I mean, especially, I mean, I haven't been around that long, but like the 90s were so concentrated with this type of dynamic of push and pull love, and just that tension, and just like it couldn't ever be fucking easy. I think my matrix programming is like, love is not easy. There needs to be some sort of tension.
Yeah, like what are some other love is or isn't statements that are
love is pain?
Yeah, love is pain. I mean, sure, love is pain in that, like, all that isn't love, when you realize it, then it, of course, pain. Like, when I say that, I reference the twin flame journey of the most painful experience of my life, but it was also the most beautiful, loving experience of my life. Yeah, I mean, there's like all sorts of little phrases that were so embedded in our culture, right? That we just like are so prone to use and say, and it's just like excuses. But it's not our fault. We learned from people who were also wounded and didn't know. And, you know, again, from the higher perspective, it's all working out perfectly. Like we're following so perfectly. And it's just so exciting to be here now and be, you know, part of the evolution of love on this planet right now. It's just like, ooh, I can feel it. Like I feel what's coming, and I'm just like, yes. And especially to meet people in their like centered wholeness, you know, like, it just makes my heart just.
So two different Davids on here tonight. I'll read the comment from David O. He says Romeo and Juliet. That was another one. That was a big one. And we got introduced to that like in high school, like with reading Shakespeare and stuff. But that is for sure some tragic shit that was embedded.
Tragic. This is some tragic shit right there.
Yeah. And then David J says, us blokes are taught the same. Disney nonsense too. We're taught to slay dragons and ride stallions. What's the trick to be able to do for ourselves what we try to do for others, instead of unfairly hoping they'll return what we desperately desire?
Ooh, say that again.
What's the trick to be able to do for ourselves what we try to do for others, instead of unfairly hoping they'll return what we desperately desire? I don't know what that means, but I see you, David J.
Let me.
3 Davids. Sorry.
3 Davids? That's awesome. Hello, all the Davids.
And shout out to Billy too. Shout out to Billy, my girl Billy. But keep going.
I mean, can you repeat just the first part again?
I'll read the whole thing. Us blokes are taught the same Disney nonsense too. We're taught to slay dragons and ride stallions. What's the trick to be able to do for ourselves what we try to do for others, instead of unfairly hoping they'll return what we desperately desire?
Yeah. You're gonna have to learn to give that to yourself.
Yeah.
That validation.
Yeah.
You know, and it's incredibly painful to I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's so painful to go back and you know, untangle that web of stories and shed all those layers of conditioning, especially like the masculine conditioning. Like I feel so much for you guys out there, like, and you know, females that carry the more masculine template. I feel for you, like, my heart hurts for you. You know, all of us, of course, and men so much too, because it just feels like there's less role models for men out there in terms of coming from a healed place. It feels like there's more feminine. That's just my interpretation, of course. It's up for debate, but I feel for you, and I really honor that part of you. It's a lot of like unlearning to seek outwardly, and you know, it'll involve drawing boundaries around people too, and like removing certain environments from your life. Like for me, I divorced my family pretty much at the end of last year. Like I had to just separate myself from the dynamics because they were so dysfunctional. Nothing bad about them. They're wonderful people. I just couldn't heal until I removed myself from that situation. And I think that, you know, a lot of people are unwilling to do that because they're worried what other people will think. You know, it's of course it's hard when we're super codependent and we've learned to like betray ourselves before betraying others. It's so hard to untangle that. It took me so many different like tries of like boundaries and then betraying myself like over and over again. I finally, like, it was too painful for me to betray myself. And it finally, like, it hit that like vortex of like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, and the universe listens and it's like, oh yeah, bitch, okay.
Are you sure you're done?
Because I'm about to send you the guy with the best abs, the nicest tan, and everything on your list. So let's see if you're really like walking the talk, or talking the walk, whatever the phrase is.
Exactly. Oh my God, yes.
But boundaries, that is something like I never was taught boundaries. Boundaries didn't exist in my house, and yeah, like I even like with friends, I didn't have boundaries. I wanted to be liked. I had friends, great. I was too afraid to speak up my mind, even in the friend center. But boundaries are so like necessary, not even to survive, but to thrive. The power of saying no when you want to say no. Woo, my God.
And it's so scary at first.
Yeah.
At least for me, like, oh, just like it feels so gross. Yeah. Like the guilt.
Yes.
The shame, everything that comes up. You're like, I don't have a right to say no. I have to be available. All that is just like so much story, and it's just like pulling gum out of your brain. It's like, ew, like that's. Of course, you have a right to say no, you know. But of course, if we didn't learn that when we were growing up, how are we going to be able to do it now? You know. And enmeshment trauma is massive, where there's just like a lucidity between you and all of your family members where there's no privacy. Everyone's in each other's business. For me, like I had journals read, so like nothing was, nothing was private. Everything was just like this, you know, everyone's gossiping and judging each other, telling each other what to do. And like there's so many families out there like that, you know. And when you don't have that boundary that's like, this is my stuff and this is your stuff, especially when it comes to emotions and needs and expectations, all those things, of course you're like not gonna know that you have a right to say no. Like, you know, like it's like no wonder. Like I look back, or I look around, and just I from just witnessing, like I love to just people watch. I don't know about you, but I just love to watch people. And my heart, I used to be a very judgmental person. Of course, I slip up and judge still too, but I'm quite conscious of it now. And now I just look around and wonder, and I'm sort of just like, no wonder that you are hurting. Like, no wonder. And I have so much compassion for people just because, like, we didn't learn this stuff growing up. We didn't really learn how to, you know, how people say, like, how to adult. Like, we literally did not learn how to adult because we still have a child inside of us that is crying for attention, and needing that love and that tenderness, you know, mother wound, father wound, societal programming, you know, addiction. At the core of all addiction is a pain spot, what one of my mentors calls a God-sized hole. You know, it's that God-sized hole that's like aching for something, and we fill it with all sorts of things, you know, love, alcohol, Netflix, our phones, you know, overworking, all these things,
over exercising,
shopping, spending money, filling up all our free time so that we never have time alone to sit in silence. Oh,
Yes, that's a big one right there.
I still struggle with that, the silence and stillness. Like I have just been so programmed to do, go, go, go. And our society is just like productivity, ah!
Yes, numbers,
Yeah,
crunching,
yeah,
output.
do stuff now.
Yes, and then buy stuff.
Consume.
Yes. No, and that's been like I don't know where I got what I'm about to drop. I think my friend said this, but he was like, COVID-19 and everything that's gone on, like with everything shut down, has been the great equalizer because everyone is pretty much on the same ground now. And, the things that people used to reach out for to like cope with this emotional wounding that they carried, whether it is the alcohol or the escaping to going to a bar with friends or like binge watching or just going shopping and going to the office all the time. Like, you can't do that anymore. We are now more forced to just look within ourselves, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, it's like it's painful for sure. I was already doing like this like
Yeah.
hibernation stuff before everything shut down, so I was already kind of used to it. Um, but yeah, like no, like I noticed in people, family members, friends, it's just like it's not comfortable. It's not, but here's the thing, it's not comfortable because we don't have tools. Getting the tools definitely helps make it less
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And I think that if we just learned how to do this stuff, and I'm hoping that like starting now and carrying forward that, I can start helping people with that, specifically with tools, because like I didn't know how to cry. I didn't know how to grieve. Um, and it was terrifying, the idea of like sitting silently still and holding myself to just cry. Like I could not think of one thing that terrified me more than that. Like I would get up in front of thousands of people in public speak before I would do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, I just there was no inner world. It was vacant and it was hostile, and I wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like a society thing now. Is like we're either like, I think a lot of people probably had to look, and I think a lot of people maybe even went deeper further into their like binge watching or whatever. But honestly, I think it's a good thing because, like I said, hitting a bottom is a good thing, because when you get to that place where it's so painful for you to continue living like that, you're forced to change.
Yep. Yep. Something that just came into my head also is, well, trying to go through the childhood traumas and trying to rework that and doing the self-love thing, it's all about reparenting yourself. Like, reparenting is a word I also just recently learned, where you have to become your own parent and give yourself that validation that you waited so long for mom and dad or whomever, but you have to now be the one that's like, you know what, you're great, Anya. You did a great job.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I had to make a list of basically what I did for this is I wrote down a list of everything that I thought a good mother should provide me, um, or the things that I wanted. And I wrote a list, and then I did the same for a father. And then I grieved because I didn't receive those things. And it wasn't just one time. It's been a long time process of just like, new layers of like really just honoring that that child who didn't receive those things, because I find that especially in the spiritual community, it's so easy to um, just head straight up and be like, well, I'm one with everything and all is good and stuff, and like that's good, like this is what we're aiming for, but what about this stuff? We can't skip this stuff. This stuff is very important, because no matter how high you try to go, this stuff was always going to be gurgling under the surface. I think it was like what you and I said about having a rotting floorboard and just throwing carpet over it. It doesn't work like that.
Spiritual bypass.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, grieving these things out, allowing yourself to be victimized without being in victim mentality. That's key, because like I think a lot of people misinterpret victimhood. It's the diver and the lifeguard. You dive down and you allow yourself to feel so fucking horrified about what happened to you, and you also hold the consciousness of, it is my responsibility to pull myself out. I am the creator, co-creator of my life experience. I chose these things, as part of my life path. So it's allowing yourself to be both, and that's, I think, an important piece that maybe is missing, because like you have to honor what happened to you. That little kid needs a champion, it needs somebody to parent it, like what you said. And having a father teach you how to have personal power, and I'm just relating to like energetics of masculine and feminine energies. Having like a father compliment you on, like, honor your femininity, basically. Our fathers were the first sort of person to mirror back our femininity if we're women, and basically like affirm our gender, affirm we are a lovely little girl. And that's why do you think there's so many daddy issues, people who talk about daddy issues? That's where that is. Yeah, that's where that is. That's where that's lacking, is that like validation from the first man that you really have in contact. I'm not saying validation like in a sexual way at all.
Right,
it's just
right.
that you're like a lovely woman, like a little girl, and that you're desirable to be around, that he wants to hug you and like play with you, and thinks you're pretty in dresses and things, like, whatever those things are that you miss when you're a kid. Like, I didn't have that, and so I forever chased God, give me that. So yeah, and like mother wound, oof, that one's big for me too. For me, the mother wound shows up the most in the criticism of myself. Of like that inner critic, that lacking self-esteem, that part that just compares me to everyone. I'm not the ideal weight, my face shape is weird, all of those things. That's the mother wound for me. It shows up in the way that I try to be somebody that I'm not.
And we all have that mask
to some degree. Like, it's mild to severe. I really don't think anyone escapes in this lifetime with nothing,
like without being broken a little bit, having a few broken ribs.
So reparenting is like a process. I'm hoping that like in the spring to have some sort of like group that we can practice reparenting, and because a big part of it is the validation of what happened, to have somebody actually like listen to you without trying to fix you, and just validate your experience and say, that wasn't okay.
The exercise someone taught me was also, when you say that, also releasing judgment of it either being bad or good, and that it's pretty much like, let's say like your dad wants you to do well in school, and if you don't, he criticizes you. All of that criticism is because he wants to be the one that has that accolade of, oh, my daughter's doing well at school, and like, he wants to be seen as the one that's scholarly. It has nothing to do with you. It is his own projection that he's just leaking out on you. And just like realizing that you are not responsible for any of those projections that mom and dad put on you. Like, mom wanted you to maybe be an actor, but she herself was desiring and dying to be an actress, and she just put all of that, her baggage, onto you.
There's so much of that, peeling off layers. Like I said, like that's why one of the first things I did was just write out everything I could remember about my childhood, including like what my parents wanted me to do or things I got in trouble for. Like that's a good one to like look at that as like, what did I get in trouble for?
God, that's a really good one.
Like, what did I get like constantly told? What are those things? And then maybe look at their lives and see the connection,
Yes.
It's exactly what you're saying. It's a lot of projection and we're not responsible for it for sure. Like their projections, of course. We're responsible for our projections.
Yes. Breaking the cycle and breaking the ancestry karma, because I feel like it all repeats and just dwindles down and gets recycled. My God.
Intergenerational trauma is a very real thing. And I really feel as though this era of time right now is where so many people are breaking that cycle.
Yes.
And they're like, I have, I know a lot of people and like, there's so many people that aren't having kids or like are waiting, like, maybe a generation before that isn't something that happened. And so that to me tells me that there's already like I already know there's like a raising of consciousness. Like obviously everyone knows that we're going through an awakening now, but just to me that's already sort of like, okay, so we're deciding like, oh, we're not just going to do what other generations did. We're going to kind of stop and look around and be like, is this what I want for my life? Is this aligned with why I came here? Is this aligned with my soul? It's amazing. Like it feels very amazing to be a part of that. And
it's tough at times because I feel like you will be presented with tests where you have this dangling carrot and you're so tempted to take it because that childhood in you was lacking that feeling, and it's right in front of you and you can easily take it, but it's like, is this aligned with my soul, or is this just a visit for like some time and then I gotta move on? And like, and getting attached and trying to break that attachment, my God.
Ooh, attachment is difficult. Yeah, it's like for me, I was what they call a disorganized bonder. I think there's a few other words for it, but it's basically where you want someone close, but as soon as they get close, you push them away. And there's also anxious and avoidant bonding. So anxious is just like that clinging, and avoidant is like you pull away. And attaching is the very first thing we learn to do as children. Actually, this is interesting. I read a really amazing book. It was more like a memoir / with science weaved into it on attachment. It was so funny and enlightening, and it's like I saw myself in this woman that wrote it. She's in her 50s, and it's all about attachment and her, like how she's in her 50s and she's like, I've never had a relationship with somebody because it's always been this like crazy attaching, like, and they leave, and it's just like the first thing we learn. And if we don't get that, we're not going to have those secure attachments later in life unless we do that work. And it's hard, like what you said before, because like now that I've like come to this place inside of me, I'm not gonna go off and be with somebody who is like unconscious in their own stuff, so it's sort of like created this like vortex of like, well, I guess I'm gonna be alone.
Yeah, like the dating pool already sucks, but the fact that you're on this spiritual journey and there's a good chunk that aren't, maybe I'm just projecting and I need to change my words, but like that shit shrinks and I'm like, no.
I know. Before it used to be anyone and everyone.
Yeah.
Now it's like one person that I love, and then also just like, well, I'm with me. Yeah. I'm dating me. It's like, I made this joke to my friend the other week that I've been benched. Like it's like God like blew the whistle and was like, go to the bench, Kristie. You get a sex timeout. You get chasing love timeout. You're just on the bench.
Yeah. And like you're like, dude, coach, put me in. I got the last shot. Come on, coach.
When I have those moments and of like when you're healing and you're like, oh, I just want like something,
Yeah.
junk food, or like, I just want someone to tell me I'm pretty.
Yeah.
I have those moments when I just have to sit with them and be like, no, because I have made those like mistakes when I'm healing, and I feel like I betray myself right after it happens if I like go and seek someone out just to like manipulate a compliment out of them.
Yep.
I know what I'm doing. Like and
Trap.
it feels like such a self-betrayal. It's like, oh, this is not good. But, yeah.
But that dopamine rush though.
Hit me.
For real.
Wait.
No, but these like yes. But like all of these are like the perfect like identifiers of love addiction. It's the inadequate and consistent nurturing, the low self-esteem, the absence of positive role models, even for committed relationships. I don't think I ever had a positive role model of seeing a committed like relationship that's healthy. So I don't even know what that looks like. Like I have to like seek that out now, like whether it's through Instagram or something, or like inventing it, like, but like as an expander. And also just like the indoctrination of cultural images of perfect romantic love and happily ever after, like that all stems and causes love addiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unresolved pain from childhood, from mom and dad wounds, major love addiction. Yeah, it shows up everywhere, and I think that becoming aware of it is the first. Becoming aware, but then acknowledging that it's something that's a part of you is like such a major step, because denial is one hell of a drug.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like our egos are so good at being like, nope, that doesn't exist, because we're able to split off consciousness and just shove things down and pretend it doesn't exist because it gets too overwhelming in the moment. When we're being abandoned, our consciousness separates us from that and is like, nope, that's not happening. You don't have to deal with that pain. But it stays in there.
Yep.
That book by Dr. Bessel van Koch, The Body Keeps the Score. It lives in you. It doesn't go anywhere. It lives in you. And we are healing that right now. You and me. And everyone else who's watching. All 5 of you.
There might be only 5, but they're very loyal. They've been good. They've been a good crowd.
Dude, I was happy if it was just you and I. So I'm glad we got to have 5.
Yeah. No, I'm happy. It's not even about that. Oh, well, it dropped down to 3 after we said that. But like, I just quickly wanted to pull up like the cycle of love addiction. That's like very much familiar to like inform people that perhaps don't know that they have a love addiction or are curious. But like in the initial stage of attraction, both partners are very drawn to one another. It's all like chemistry and sparks. But as they get involved, the addict forms a fantasy of being rescued. And at the same time, their partner begins to put up walls to avoid real intimacy. So it's kind of like you are the fantasy love addict, but you somehow subconsciously choose that avoidant, even narcissistic partner to continue to propel that story. And the love addict becomes enamored with a fantasy and is blind to the real flaws of the relationship and partner.
What red flags?
No red flags. Just flags. Like, I'm colorblind.
They're rose-colored flags.
Yeah, rose-colored, actually.
Oh my god.
I know, shoot me. But so like as the relationship becomes the center of the universe for the love addicts, like they start thinking about it incessantly, and the partner begins to feel that, because everything is energy. Like our relationship is energy. It doesn't matter that I'm here and you're in Canada. If I am constantly thinking about you and just obsessing, you're going to feel that and you're going to repulse.
Yeah.
That is crazy to me. It's all energy.
Yeah. I mean, to bring back to what you just said, it's basically like you, with all of your wounds, linking up with somebody in all of their wounds. And the wounded parts are the ones that are pushing and pulling and fighting and having those like, meet my needs, these are my expectations. Those are the wounded parts of us. And wound on wound doesn't really go over so well. This is what ends in relationship destruction and divorce and, all of these things. Like, if you have unhealed abuse, there's a chance you could act out that abuse. Like, there's just so many factors in unresolved stuff that bringing it to someone else and having it kind of be their problem to fix is just like I said, we kind of have to grow up out of that. And it's a sucky realization. It's not pretty or fun or covered in shine and sugar, and it sucks. It sucks to like, but that's only the part, that's our ego being like, this is the worst. Once you realize like from like the cosmic higher up, it's like perfect, but it sucks from the human level. It really sucks.
Oh my gosh.
So this is what I have to say to you, wonderful viewers. Love addiction is real. And it comes from an unhealed place within you. And I know that you can heal it. You just need some tools. Really, like, if anyone can heal it, like I couldn't believe that I was able to heal it. Like, I don't know anybody else close to me that was as like wounded as I was in this place. And I don't say that to toot my own horn or anything. I just like, I know it's possible for other people to heal and come up from that depth of just sunk in the stuck stuff.
David J asks, how long does the suckiness last?
It's up to your soul plan, my friend. I mean, our willingness to tackle it definitely helps. Like, transmuting energies, like, instead of getting stuck in that victim place, like easing into having compassion for yourself, easing into forgiveness. I don't believe in telling people to just forgive. I think it's a process. I think a lot of people like to rush forgiveness because they're uncomfortable with like, ooh, the feeling of not being forgiven, but like, I can't even think of how many times I've prematurely been like, oh, I forgive you, and then harbored the feelings still, right? Like, I think the goal should be to heal the feeling, and then naturally out of that forgiveness arises. So no pressure to forgive anyone. The suckiness lasts as long as it needs to.
Yeah, there's no timestamp on it. It just needs to do its thing. Could you quickly give a summary of some tools that people could start with right now? Just a quick summary list, bullet list.
Yeah. On healing love addiction? Okay. Get really honest with yourself. Get really honest with your patterns. Look back at your relationships. Do the same thing, like I said, about your parents. Write down, not from an emotional standpoint, but just an objective standpoint, how it started, what the feelings were, maybe, how it progressed, how it ended. Get really real with your patterns. Like, that's one of the hardest parts, is even just acknowledging that these things exist, because we want to be perfect. We don't want to hear that we have issues. Like, humans aren't comfortable admitting fault, and that's, again, a societal problem with perfectionism. It's perfectly, wonderfully fine that you have these problems. Like, it really is. It's so common, and what makes it not as common is the denial of it. Like, everyone has this. So get really real with yourself about your patterns, and write those down. That would definitely be like one of my first things. Find someone to work with, like one-on-one. It doesn't have to be like in an official capacity, but just have someone validate to you your list of like what you have written down. That's very helpful. Because children that are wounded need to be seen and heard. That's like a very important thing for them. Many of us were not. We went to our mom and cried, and we were told to shut up, get out of the kitchen, go play with your friends. Or fed ice cream instead of letting us cry, having our emotional experience. It was denied from us. And the next thing, this is going to be shitty to hear, but you're going to need to grieve.
A lot.
I'm not saying like this is a step-by-step. Healing is so all over the place. It's just, this isn't like linear. This is just suggestions. There's a lot of different energy, psychology tools that I use, like EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping, just energy clearing is, because like emotions are energy. We're trying to get rid of all of the stuck low frequencies in our bodies.
Yes.
We do that through our emotions. You can't think your way out of matters of the heart. You can't. Like we're very addicted to rationalization in our culture and thinking, and because our bodies are this painful place. It's almost like a graveyard of pain. Like we haven't dealt with it, and it's just, ooh, I got chills.
I got goosebumps with that one. I was like, that's the one. That's the one.
It lives in our body, and we have to release it somatically. Breath work is incredible for this as well. I know Anya has an amazing tool that she recommends. I have one as well. There's books I could recommend, but it starts in the body, and feeling it out is where it's got to go. Drawing boundaries, separating yourself. Sometimes when we heal, I don't know about sometimes, maybe every time, we have to cocoon. Like we kind of just got to go into this place and just be with ourselves for a while, because it's hard to like balance the needs of others. We don't have to do those things. We think we do because we've learned that, but we don't actually have to. So undoing the stories of that and managing to just like come into this place within, because the healing comes from basically removing layers and just discovering yourself in here. It's not about adding anything on. You don't have to add anything on. You have to take off, like, and remove. And it's sort of like, think of like a cork. If you're holding it underwater, when you let go of holding it, it bounces right back up to the surface, right? We're being held underneath. We're the cork. We just sort of like, boop, when we like are able to release the things holding us under the water, right? We'll just naturally be buoyant again.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. And also past life regressions, I'll just throw that one in. Like if you have access to doing a past life regression, it might work for some, might not work for others. But for me, I found a past life regression to be very helpful as well as part of the journey.
Apparently in past lives, I have picked a difficult template every time. I was like, are you serious? Like when I had my Akashic records read, she was like, you are capable of doing the like high fluffy channeling stuff. Like you're capable of that, but your main focus here is to like be in the muck of the human part and transmute. And I was like, no, but also like,
cool.
No. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been such a beautiful like journey, just diving into these different pockets. Where can people find you?
Kristie Sparksman. You can add me on Facebook. I haven't officially started my project company, whatever you want to call it, but I'm going to start taking on people for one-on-ones. I'm hoping in the next few months. I've been finishing up my training with that, and I'm going to ease my way into that, and it'll be focused on childhood healing and releasing and grief and that one-on-one validation that I said. So
thank you so much for your service and your time and your smile.
Thanks. It costs a lot of money, a lot of orthodontics over the years.
Oh yeah, I feel you. That's a different segue. We'll talk about the orthodontics on a different episode.
All right.
Have a wonderful night.
Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you everyone for